All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're going to break down a pretty wide ranging speech from a former president, and it really lays out a very distinct vision for America's role on the world stage. We're talking everything from a pretty surprising real estate deal to the future of NATO and what a new kind of foreign policy might look like. So, that quote you're seeing, we want a piece of ice for world protection and they won't give it. Wow. I mean, that really sets the stage for everything we're about to talk about. It frames international relations in this incredibly direct, almost blunt way. So, what exactly is this piece of ice he's talking about? Well, the speech kicks off with something super specific and I think for a lot of people pretty surprising, a proposal for the United States to acquire Greenland. Yep, you heard that right. The main thrust of the argument is that the US should start negotiations with Denmark right now to buy Greenland. Just buy it outright. Kind of like how other territories have been acquired throughout American history. Okay, so the big question is why Greenland? I mean, of all places, why there? And why bring this up now? Well, the speech doesn't just throw the idea out there, it actually lays out a pretty detailed strategic reason for it. And what's really interesting here is that, according to the speech, this has nothing to do with, say, natural resources. That idea is just kind of brushed aside. Nope, this is framed entirely as a national security issue. The argument goes like this. It's part of the North American continent, it's a critical strategic spot between us, Russia and China, and Denmark, even as an ally, just can't defend it properly. And to really hammer this point home, this speech lays out this whole historical timeline. It paints a picture of the U.S. having to step in during World War II to defend Greenland at a great cost, only to make what the speaker calls a stupid move by giving it back. And the bottom line? The argument is that the strategic need for it is much more necessary now than it ever was. So this whole way of thinking about Greenland, the idea that America is carrying the weight for an ally, that actually feeds into a much, much bigger critique. The Greenland issue is presented as just one symptom of a larger problem with the entire NATO alliance. And this quote pretty much sums it all up. The central complaint here is that the whole relationship is just a one-way street. The U.S. is shouldering the burden for Europe's defense, and in return, according to the speech, we get so little back. And just to show you how serious this point is, the speech makes a pretty dramatic claim that before he stepped in, the United States was basically paying for, get this, 100% of NATO. The argument is that other countries just weren't pulling their weight. So the story laid out in the speech goes like this. Before he came along, most countries were paying basically nothing. Then, during his presidency, he didn't just get them to the 2% goal. He claims he got NATO to pay 5%, completely changing the financial setup of the whole alliance. But, this skepticism isn't just about the money. Not at all. The speech expresses this really deep doubt that even after everything the US puts in, would our NATO allies really be there for us if we needed them? It's a fundamental question about whether the alliance is truly a two-way street. And as you can probably guess, this view of, let's call them unreliable allies, directly ties into the speaker's perspective on the biggest conflict happening in Europe right now, the war in Ukraine. Right here, the speech makes a pretty stunning claim. It draws a direct line from U.S. domestic politics to a major international war, basically saying the whole thing wouldn't have started if the 2020 election hadn't been, in the speaker's words, rigged. And the human toll of the war is really emphasized. The speech throws out this number, 31,000 soldiers lost in just 1 month, calling the whole conflict a bloodbath that he feels a personal need to stop. So what's the proposed solution then? Well, the speech positions the speaker as this unique kind of peacemaker. The idea is that he knows both Putin and Zelensky, believes they both want a deal, and he can use those personal relationships to end it all. And the reason given? It's all about stopping the fighting because, as he says, too many souls are being lost, even though it's happening thousands of miles away. Okay, so you have these positions on Greenland, on NATO, on Ukraine, and holding it all together, sort of the foundation for everything, is another key theme, a claim of just overwhelming, totally rebuilt U.S. military strength.
And this quote, this is basically the mission statement for that idea. The argument is that after a huge military rebuilding program, America isn't just powerful again, it's more powerful now than it has ever been, period.
And to try and put that into perspective, the speech makes this really wild comparison. It claims that our new battleships are 100 times more powerful than the battleships from World War II. It's meant to paint a picture of this just unbelievable jump in military tech. And the speech gets even more specific. It talks about having weapons that nobody ever heard of, B-2 bombers that are totally undetectable, and even a brand new fighter jet, the F-47, which is described as the first stage 6 plane. So when you put all of these pieces of the puzzle together, you've got the demand for Greenland, the harsh critique of NATO, the claims of incredible military power. A very clear, very consistent worldview starts to take shape. You could basically call it a transactional foreign policy. From this perspective, every single relationship, every alliance, it's a deal. It's all measured in costs and benefits. It's about who's paying their share and what strategic assets you're getting. Respect isn't about shared values, it's earned through strength and money. And that brings us full circle, right back to Greenland. The final message for Denmark, as laid out in the speech, is really the perfect example of this transactional approach. It's not framed as a friendly negotiation between allies. It's presented as a choice, plain and simple, and a choice that has consequences.
Which really leaves us with one big, final question to chew on. This speech lays out a very clear vision for a world order built on transactions, and it forces us to ask, what happens when international alliances are viewed that way? What would that world actually look like?